Today's guest is a business mindset coach and certified paediatric chiropractor. He is the author of 2 books, Rediscover Your Greatness and A Walk in the Dark. He is also the creator and host of 2 podcasts, The Mindful Experiment and The Mindful Chiropractor. Welcome to the show, Dr. Vic. How are you doing?
I'm doing amazing, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Mirror Talk. I really appreciate your presence right here. I was reading about you a little bit. I read that you did not start your life, in the calm and peaceful mindsets, way of starting life. You were off the wall, high stress, anxious type of individual who could be distracted by the many things that life offers. So can you kindly share your life journey so far? How did you become a calm, successful and balanced and accomplished individual?
Oh, man. We could talk all day on this one. It was a long journey, right? Because, back when I got into chiropractic school, I started to understand what ADHD really was. And I look back and I go, holy cow, that was me. No wonder I drove my parents crazy. No wonder I was always all over the place. No wonder I couldn't sit still. And so I was that ADHD kid who was just all over, couldn't sit in school well. I couldn't, I was just bouncing around. I always had this energy. I would wake up first thing in the morning, ready to go. And I would go all day. And then at night, when it's time to go to sleep, hopefully I would sleep. I mean, that's how much energy I had. And so it was hard. There's a negative side to that because there's some good to being having ADHD or being ADHD. You have a higher IQ, you're great in sports, you can multitask really, really well. There's a lot of good to that. The other side is focusing on certain tasks are going to be hard. Not all tasks, because, some ADHD kiddos, if you play a video game, man, I can be laser focused in a video game and I can dominate in that. But if it came to school or things I wasn't interested in, or you weren't up to speed with what how my mind processes, I get bored and I just get like that. So there was challenges in school a lot for that. And my outlet was sports. And so as I went through life, I didn't like feeling this way because the other side of it is anxiety, anxiousness, emotional irregularity. So I could be really on a high and I could be on a extreme low within just a snap of a fingers. And this was my life and my story all throughout my teenage years. And then it wasn't until I was 19 years old or 20 years old where things started to shift and started to change. And that's when I got introduced into chiropractic. I went to chiropractors when I was a kid, a couple times here and there, but that was pretty much it. And then it wasn't until, I apologize, I was 19 years old. But as I was 19, I had health issues kick in, a bunch of stuff. I was a healthy kid. I ate clean for the most part as a college kid at 19. I took a ton of supplements. I worked out regularly. I played rugby for Arizona State. I was in the best shape good shape of my life. And but all of a sudden I just had health issues. My health was just declining. And no matter how much harder I worked on things, changing my nutrition, taking different supplements, nothing was getting better. And so I started to get a little scared because, again, with ADHD, you can rev up your brain very fast. So all of a sudden I'm going, oh my goodness, what's going on? Do I have a disease? Do I have a blood disorder? What's happening here? Yeah. And so long story short, went to the chiropractor. He told me that he can help me with my life and change it all around in 3 months. I thought he was crazy. And right before I went back to school, he did. 2 months later, all my symptoms were gone. 4 months total. All my symptoms were gone. I was in the best shape of my life. I mean, I went down to 10% body fat. Wow. I was already doing the same workouts. I was eating the same. Nothing changed, right? So how'd this calm me down? Well, what happened is that through chiropractic, it helped calm my nervous system by helping my body and my brain communicate better. From there, it opened up the door to allow me to practice yoga and meditation. And that was what because of chiropractic and opening that door to allow me to sit in a space and just sit there and be at peace was something I could not do. I'd be racing thoughts always, all the time, very hard to sit still. And so it allowed me to start to practice a meditation. And through my journey of practicing meditation, since I was around 21 years old, I've been doing it now for about 17 years straight. And it's one of the things I do not miss in my life. I do it every single day. And that has helped me to stay focused and centered on top of what chiropractic has done for me. And I've practiced a ton of other modalities now, like breath work, and there's journaling and gratitude practicing and a whole plethora of other stuff to just add to that mix to how can I keep my focus centered on what I need to do every day. And now I can say in my life now, even though I don't have an ADHD or anything like that, I have the good of it is what I used to teach kids who had ADHD when I work with them is I'll tell the parents, we're going to get the good out of this. That's the higher IQ, the better at sports, all that good stuff. But we're going to minus all the negatives out of that.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of been my journey leading up to where I'm at today.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And can you tell me what, the chiropractor did to you? Like, what did the chiropractor do in order to, shaping your life back, in order to connect your brain back to your body system and all that?
Yeah. Well, it was funny because, when I love when patients will ask, like, say, hold on, you're going to do this to my spine and that's going to take care of all this. And I'm like, it's funny you say that because that's the exact same question I asked my chiropractor. I was like, you're going to go ahead and make adjustments to my spine, specifically my neck. And I'm doing stuff with my hands because he would adjust with his hands. And I was like, and that's just going to solve everything? Like, no, there's got to be something more complicated. And he was like, no, we've complicated health. He's like, it's a lot more simple than that. And it really was. So all it is you get adjusted. So by adjustments is the chiropractor uses his hands. In my office, I use instruments to make adjustments, but it's all to the spine. And the reason why chiropractors work on the spine is because that's the highway of communication. That is what connects us from our brain to our body. All information has to go up to inform the brain through the spine, and all commands from the brain going down to the body has to go through the spine. And so that's why chiropractors work on the spine. And when you have better communication there, the nervous system's calmer. It's not stressed. And so then it can adapt better. It can heal better. The body's designed to self-heal. We all know this. You've had a cut on your arm before. You did not have to think about the certain proteins and all the different things that had to happen to heal that cut. And you just went on with your life and it heals on its own. So the same concept is your body does that too. Chiropractors just enhance that to give it the body the best chance to adapt to its environment, but also to with itself too. And so that's where the adjustments come in. And that's what I was not doing. I wasn't adapting to my environment, and my body was not adapting well with itself and everything that was going on. And so as through care, that all started to communicate better, which allowed me to adapt better, which then allows me to thrive. And that's why my health gets better.
What would you advise, or what would you tell your patients to do in order to, avoid their spinal cord from being stressed, or in order to ensure that, the communication system between the brain and the body is, in a good state? Here's
the thing. We all face stress at some point, shape, or time. And there's only a certain amount that we can handle. And the thing is, when you have too much stress, more than what your body can handle, it's going to cause something what we call in chiropractic a subluxation. But for simpler terms, just think of it as a miscommunication. That's kind of what it really is. And so we all are creating these in some way, shape, or form. And it's just our body not able to adapt. Our nervous system's not able to adapt. It's too stressful. Yeah. And in today's world, we're very overstimulated. We have these little things here called a little mini computer called a phone. Yeah. We're always stimulated by that. Social media, the news, you name it. So our nervous system is always revved, and it's not getting a chance to slow down and reset. And so what chiropractors do is we build up this nervous system and basically help it to reset itself so that it can get back to more of a balanced state so it can handle the next thing that we have to deal with in life. Nice. So that's chiropractic is the first thing. The second thing I always recommend to my patients is you have to have some form of mindfulness practice. That's either with breath work, because breath work is very powerful in changing up the neurology. So it makes a stop to the stress response in the nervous system and just gives that nervous system a break. If you're under chiropractic care and you do that, it helps with what we're doing in chiropractic to make sure that we don't go back to old bad patterns. So either that, like meditation is great. I usually don't recommend it offhand in the beginning because to be honest, anyone, if I say just go sit in a room and just be at peace, they're going to go crazy. If they've never practiced this before, it takes about 90 days to really get down and get meditation down well. And it's going to stress you out. Like when I work with coaching clients on this and we incorporate meditation, I always tell them 90 days, every single day, you're going to not like me. It's going to drive you crazy. But you know what though? By day 90, you may get some bliss around 40, 50 days, but by day 90, you should have the neural programming in your brain to kind of get used to keeping it under control.
And what's the best way to learn this? What's the best way to learn how to meditate properly?
There is so many resources out there now. I mean, there's the Calm app, there's Headspace, there's so many new things that are coming out. YouTube, you can just listen to what I always recommend if someone's going to do meditation starting out, guided meditation is nice to start with. It's not something I recommend long-term, but just short-term, because you can just sit in a quiet space. You have someone speaking to you, telling you what to focus on and what to do. So it's kind of like guiding along the way, which makes it a lot easier to make that transition.
Yeah.
Eventually you're going to evolve from there, and you can start to feel it. You're going to think about your thoughts. You're going to pay attention to them, because thoughts are coming all over the place.
Yes.
And, but you're just going to be like, that's fine. Let it go. That's fine. Let it go. Let me get back to center. And then once you do that, then it's just, there's different, there's a variety of different techniques. There's a variety of different stuff out there. But in my personal experience and what I share with people is guide is the first way to go. And then from there, there is so many ways of how you can meditate. I in one of my books, I think I shared like 9 or 10 different ways. And I said, just Google them. I literally just put that in the last paragraph. Like, just Google them. I'm not going to explain what these are. I'm going to save you time from reading.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to waste people's time, and I don't want to waste the time of writing it, because it's like they can just Google this. But there's so many different forms out there that you can do. But meditation is a tool. If you I used to teach this in corporate wellness when I speak with business, different corporations. And I would say the way I would promote to get in to talk is I say, do you want me to help your employees increase their focus by 30% and increase their productivity from that by 50? And no employer is going to say no to that. And I said, that's going to help your bottom line at the end of the day. He's like, how do you do that? I said, meditation. They thought I was crazy. Here's the research. And so one of the ways just to increase productivity, increases focus, is meditation. And that's going to lead to more productivity. And if you want to take a little bit some of the spiritual universal aspects of things, the better you can focus, the better then you're going to be able to manifest things you want to create in your life.
Yes. And this leads me to my next question. I know you work with a lot of, entrepreneurs and also chiropractors out there, and you help them to double their profits while working less and leading more soul-filled lives, basically. So can you enlighten me on how you do this? Can you, expatiate a little bit on how you do this, and how can we achieve more and at the same time work less?
So there's a lot of different things I work on when it comes to that. But when you come to doubling profits, it's kind of easy to do in a sense. I know some people look at me and go, what do you mean by easy? Like that sometimes I've been trying for 3 years to double my profits and I can't do that. But there's many different practices of that. We can look at that from a business side and just clean up the business, and that usually works. But from the work that I do on the whole encompass is that you have to understand that money is life energy. It's just a means of trading. And so, but what happens is, what I mean by life energy is, to acquire more, you have to have more energy to do that. You have to be very hyper focused on what you do with your energy. And so a lot of the work I do is it's all about vision first, and understanding what's your vision in life. And I take my clients through a whole journey of from life vision to basically like your eulogy. Imagine if you passed away, the person's going up to speak. What do you want them to say about you? Right? That's your vision in life. What is it that you want to be recognized and remembered for? Yeah. And then we break that down all the way down to a year. And what is it that you want to create? What's the reasons why? We do a lot of work of understanding why and get clarity, because unfortunately in today's world, we're very cultured programmed. And what that means is that even this happened to me. So I'll share my own personal story. When I came out of chiropractic school, before I even came out, I was already studying the best chiropractors. Who's the most successful, right? But that's a program, because what is successful, right? And for me, when I was trained and taught based on what I saw so much, because it wasn't it's what I was exposed to the most, which is a high volume practice where they see a lot of patients and, all these different things. And so in my world, it took me 5 years to break that down, to realize that it wasn't about the number of patients I was seeing in my office that mattered. It was the number of my finances and what I had. So I had to start looking at things a little differently. Once I broke away from that, I started creating my own story of success. What does success really mean to me? And so there's a law out there. It's a universal law called the law of least effort. And what that means is everything in the world, there's a certain amount of work that you need to do that will give you the certain amount of result. But there's only a certain amount. That's it. After this level, it's not going to change anything more or less. You can put more into it. It's still going to get the same result. It's not going to maximize more. So it's the least amount of work to get the greatest gain possible. And so I started studying this law, and I'm like, okay, how do I make that happen? And so I read a book. One of them was Tim Ferriss's book, The 4-Hour Workweek. And I go, oh my God, this is it. And the universe must have been telling me, or I don't know how it all aligned, but I was like, this is the law of least effort. So how can I make the most amount of money I possibly can with the least amount of work possible during the week? And so I started looking at my hours. I started strategizing. I started looking at all these different things. And so I started going, okay, what's the max potential of what I can do? Here's why. So one of the reasons why I can help people double their profits so easily is I help them be congruent with their life. And the reason why congruency is so important is because with the cultural programming, we think this is what we want, but it's really not what we want. And so we go out and try to achieve it and go after it. And all of a sudden we keep hitting a roadblock. We keep hitting a ceiling. We keep not being able to get to the level we want to, or we have to put all this work in to exhaust ourselves to burn out multiple times just to try to get there as much as we possibly can. Yeah. And what really happens is there's an incongruency. There's a block that you don't realize that's going to actually, no matter what you do, it's not going to allow you to break through. And until you break that block. And for me, I had a lot of incongruencies because I've always said to myself, you don't have to work hard to be successful. We've been told that, but that doesn't mean it has to be true. Because if we're true creators of our life, we dictate the rules, not the people dictating us. And so that's why I use the word cultural programming a lot. And so then all of a sudden I started looking into these things. And once I started to remove these blocks and I started to be more of what my vision of life was, what defines success means to me, what is the definition of being a chiropractor? And what is my vision of chiropractic and what do I want to share and empower my community with? Once I started defining all these things, then when I started doing the work, things just happened faster. Things became a lot easier. I'm not saying I wasn't stressed. It didn't work. I didn't stop working or didn't work as hard. I still had to do things, but I was able to run an office where I ended up making more money running my office by cutting almost my hours in half than I did working more hours. And that opened up the door to allow me to do other things because I had passions of being a coach and because I studied the mind for over 10 years. And I was like, I want to be able to help people thrive in their life. I want to be able to help them break out of these barriers that I had that I didn't even know was there. I was following everyone else, didn't know that until I started to realize and break them down. Then I had to redefine who I am and what all these things mean to me. And from once I had that congruency, you can call it integrity, you can call it being authentic. These are the terms you can kind of tie into it. I like the word congruency, it just means more for me. But it's one of those things, once I was congruent with every action I took and it was all aligned to my vision, man, doubling my practice, that was a piece of cake. I tripled my sales in 2 years. I tripled my profits in 1 year, and I started to work less as I was doing that. And it was mind blowing for me because I was told as like a chiropractor, if you're a family wellness chiropractor, you got to work weekends, you got to do this. So I did that for the longest time, burning out every 4 to 6 months. And then I was like, you know what? No, who told me if I'm truly the creator of my life? And I love asking my clients this, if you're truly the creator of your life and we are creators in some way, shape or form, then we should be dictating what the rules are for ourselves.
Yes.
Because if we can't dictate the rules, then we're not a creator. Then we're just living this life and it's all been planned out for us. And well, we can get into those degrees, but basically what I mean by that is you can just live and exist and it's just going to lead to wherever you were going to go.
What would you say your definition of success is? What is your definition of success?
My definition of success? Love this. So for me, it's I teach the 5 elements of life. And what that is I call them the 5 M's. So it's movement, which is basically your physical health, mindset, marriage. That marriage can be any relationship. It doesn't have to be just a spouse. It can be any relationship. My mission in life, and then money. Success to me is mastering all 5 of those.
Wow. Okay.
That's what success means to me. And if you want to put it a little simpler, financial freedom and emotional freedom. So that's really where it comes down to. But the 5 M's and having those at fulfillment, because my physical health, if I'm not physically healthy, then what can I do for the world, right? Because health is the first of all liberties.
Yes, that's true.
If I don't have money, I can't continue to grow as an individual, share my gifts, be able to create opportunities for that, help to give back. And that kind of ties into mission a little bit too, to help give and donate and do these other things. I'm minimized. I can't do that. If my relationship's not solid with my wife, forget about it. And that also relates to family and so forth. But my wife's my most primary one. So how that relationship is going to determine how I'm going to be. Yes. So when you take these all in, mindset and so forth, all these things, those are the 5 elements of my life that have to be in perfect balance and always growing. And if that's doing that, I'm successful.
Yes, I love that. Yes. And, earlier you were talking about, we're breaking free from our social and cultural pre-programming or programming already in order to, be able to create our own lives. So how can we be, the creator of our lives? How can we be the genuine creator of our lives and break free from all of these rules and regulations that the world or our culture have, laid lay it down for us, basically.
The first you have to do is you have to unlearn everything you learned. I mean, and understand that everything that you think of what your life is not really true. It's only true if whatever is true. It's only true whatever's true for you. And I know this gets a little confusing, but it's one of the things like this. We have a lot of conditioning in many different ways, even from 0 to 7. And we have this outlook on life and what we think it is, right? You can line up 10 people. You can tell them, hey, let's talk about COVID and what happened in the last couple of years. Probably 8 out of those 10 are going to say this is absolutely horrible, blah, 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 all these things, right? You'll get that 1 or 2 person. They'll be like, this is actually a blessing to humanity. And people are going, what do you mean? All these people died. But they're going to have a different perspective. Why do they have that perspective versus someone else, right? Yes. And it's their different viewpoints. Once you realize that you have to be aware and see what's going on in your life, because life's always going to give you clues. The universe is always going to nudge you. If you want to achieve something and you're hitting a wall and you're just like, I don't know why I'm not there. There's a block there. And that's going to be your first clue, because the universe is always, or God or Allah or whatever you want to call it, is always there to support you in every step of the way. It wants you to evolve to the highest level you want to expand to. Yeah. And so when these kind of things show up, when you have these blocks, or you have this fight with your partner, or these type of things, how do you project? How do you look at what a relationship is? If you want to, I know I'm going on a couple tangents here, or a couple different directions. But if you look at, for example, a relationship's a great one. If you take your time and just write what a relationship means to you, you're going to see what that is, and just write it out really nice. And then look back and say, well, is that really me? Is that what I really think of a relationship? Or what's my true definition of a relationship? What does that mean? Right? And you literally just rewrite your life on definitions. In one of my books I wrote, I talked about how words define your reality, but the reason why I say it defines your reality, because the words you choose will define, they have a vibration, and they also will, there's different wordings can define what it is that you experience, because we use word to express and create, right? We use words that we bundle together to create a story. Mm-hmm. That story creates your life. It's all part of this process. And so sometimes you can just change this programming by changing the story. I mean, literally as simple as that. Mm-hmm. By just paying attention to what you say to yourself often. What's the thing that emotionally triggers you the most? There's programming in that. There's going to be something there. A lot of my clients, when they get mad and they get frustrated, they get this knee-jerk reaction, and they're very angry about something. Something may have happened, or something that really bothered them. I'll say, let's go into there. There's some good stuff here. Look, what do you mean there's good stuff? Oh, there's going to be some lessons coming out of this one. And the reason why is because we're having knee-jerk reactions from the subconscious mind, not knowing why we're doing that. But if we take time to use our conscious mind to start analyzing it, it will give us nuggets of wisdom to go, wait a minute. Where did this come from? Why is this here? Is this really me? Is it the way the society is, or does this come from my parents? Like, for an example, inner critic thinking, or inner talk in your head. A lot of the times, the voices that you have that are those critics inside you aren't your voice. It's usually your parents, or it's someone who you looked up to as a child. And it's usually from 0 to 7. So if you can do this work, and it takes practice and it takes time, but if you understand that the universe is always there to support you, and it's always going to give you these situations, especially if you're hitting these roadblocks or you're getting these emotional reactions, this is the way to truly unveiling these hidden things that are programmed. And then you have the opportunity to stop it, change the story, change the script. I call it, one of my coaching programs I call it flipping the script. And all that means is whatever that story is you're telling yourself, stop it at that moment. Say, don't judge it, just stop it, flip the script, and say a new story that's more meaningful.
It's so great that you're talking about flipping the script and changing the story, because I know you studied the mind for over 10 years, like you're a mind master basically. So I would love to know, how can we overcome the mind? How can we overcome the inner critics? And how can we gain a much more centered life, basically? There's
a lot I can go into. I'll keep it real simple, what we've been talking about. So the inner critic is always there, and I think you should name it. You should give it a name. I call it stinking thinking. It's not really a name per se. But I've interviewed somebody who wrote a book, and he calls it the something monkey. Giving it a name, then all of a sudden doesn't hold on all these emotions to it. Yeah. It kind of creates a separation from you, saying, well, that's not really me. Because if we don't do that, then all of a sudden when we have that inner critic, what's the voice? The voice is you. Yes. And then you think that's you. right?
Mm.
But really deep down, it's not who you are. It's not what you really think of yourself. I had someone tell me one time, and I love this. They go, would you date yourself the way you talk to yourself? And I was like, F no, I wouldn't. And they're like, you got to change that up then. And I always thought about that. And I go, you know what? How do I think of myself? Right? What are the things I say to myself often? And so when I name it or give it a name, like I said, mine's stinking thinking. But when I start to do that, all of a sudden I'm like, that's not me. That's stinking thinking coming in. It's trying to mess with me. It's trying to get into my head. I'm not going to allow it. And then all of a sudden, since when I do that, it gives me that awareness to know that. So then I can just give it its title, kind of shove it away, and then go right back to what I was doing or go back to whatever that is that I'm working on.
Yeah. So give it a name and, just, yes, deal with it basically.
It sounds simple, but again, it's one of the things that when you give it a name, then you're separating it from you. And now that's not you anymore. And once you become more aware of that tune of that voice or the tone or what it makes you feel like, because it usually lowers anything that's like a lower vibration, you're going to feel it. It makes you heavy. Like if you think of an image right now, that's something that you love and that you enjoy. As soon as that image comes to your head, you're going to feel like a lightness happen, right? And then if I say, think of something that's gruesome or negative or something that scares you or makes you worry, all of a sudden you're going to feel like a heaviness on your chest. And that's just from imagery and using something like that with an emotion tied to it. And so once you become aware of that, this is like really like Jedi kind of stuff, because if you become more aware of those emotions, those are going to lead to let you know who's really talking here, because the real you is all about inspiration, uplifting. It's all about being joy, bliss, happiness. It's that kid that was pure before it was tarnished by adults. And I'm not bashing adults or parents or anything. It's just we have baggage. And a lot of times when people don't work through their stuff, you're going to pass it down to the next generation. It's just what we do. And so the key factor is making sure that we take care of ourselves and clear up as much as we can so that we give less to our next generation.
Yes. I love that. And talking about baggages and all that, darkness that we carry along from life journey, basically. All of us talk about your second book. It's titled A Walk in the Dark. And this book is a genuine, guide to finding our true light. And it is designed to end mental suffering. And this is very relevant because a lot of people out there, suffering from mental suffering, or suffering from mental issues, basically. So can you tell me what inspired you to write this book?
After I wrote my first book, I have a goal of writing 30 books. In about another week or two, I'll be starting my third book. I'm a little behind right now, so I got to get writing again. But it was one of the things where I wrote the first one and I started going and I got into meditations and I'm like, what's my second book going to be? And it wasn't coming to me. And then one day I was in a meditation and I saw darkness, like just pitch black. And I saw this like little speck of light and it was like, it brightened up the darkness a little bit. Yeah. And I was like, man, the dark of the world. I go, why is that coming to me? And I started just playing with it. I started meditating more on this. And then all of a sudden it's like, I need to write a book on how the darkness is our best friend. I need to write a book on how our challenges and our obstacles are our greatest gift ever. And that there's no such thing as bad in the world. That was the key of my book, is letting you know that there's no such thing as bad. You can say there's events that happen. Events happen. That's just what it is, right? But it's what we put onto that next, that story, the charge, the emotional charge, the attachments to that is going to dictate what that is. And if this is like being the spiritual alchemist of your life, this is the creator, right? Because whatever happens, that's fine. This happened to me. So what? Here's what that's going to mean for me, right? And now you start to incorporate that. So in the book, I talk a lot about the ego mind versus the heart-centered mind. What is really the ego? I really try to break that down in 2 chapters. There are people who write books on this. And I was like, I need people to understand that ego is a good thing, that our ego mind is there to protect and serve us. And so that's just where and the reason why I shared that was because it's going to talk about then why we put these certain charges on certain events that happen. And usually it's stuff from our past, 0 to 7, that's there. And then we haven't evolved and cleared through that. So when the event happens in our adult life, our brain's still thinking like it's going to happen like we went through when we were a kid. Yes. And so I walked through that. But one of the things is the mental suffering component came in because I was like, if people who have mental health issue or mental suffering, and we all suffer in some way, shape, or form. And it's one of the things where if I can just share that aspect, understand that those dark moments are going to be they're the greatest gift of light. They're the greatest gift of wisdom and so much more. But even more importantly, to also show that the biggest reason why we suffer in the world, why suffering exists. Now, this is just my studying in the last 15 years, that what I've learned over time is that the reason why we suffer is because of resistance. We resist things. Like when you have a fear, like I have a fear of being in deep water or flying on a plane. Well, you see me go on a plane, I'm very good now at handling my emotions with everything, but it's one of the things where internally though, there's resistance. My heart's beating fast and my respiration's going up and so forth. You get me. I don't like being in open water, particularly the ocean. I don't know. Lakes are okay. I still get a little wary, but the oceans would get to me. Why? Don't know. Lack of control. Who knows? Probably some cultural, ancestral stuff. But long story short, it's one of the things where again, it's this old feeling of something that happened when I was a kid. And it just comes up. It's understanding that the book itself really was to share that aspect, to understand that being aware of what resistance looks like and how it shows up in our life, because the more you can understand that and just let go, because resistance is usually there because we have a lack of certainty that exists. And COVID showed us that. This is why I talk a lot about when COVID first came out, I was talking a lot about the fear side and don't buy into it. There's not saying that COVID isn't real or anything. I was just saying that from a fear aspect, for many different reasons, but what it's going to do to your health, because you're building up all this resistance that it can lead to a lot of different things. And so resistance is a key to a lot of that, and understanding if I really believe the book was really down to the point of, if people can really grasp that darkness is your best friend, and that's where your power shows of your light. And what I mean by that is, if I put a candlelight in front of a nice lit room, you're not really going to see the power of that light. It may light things up just a hair, if that, right?
Yeah, yes.
But if I take you with me and we go into a pitch black room and I light that candle, it's going to light up the whole room. And that's why the darkness is there. It's there to teach people that here we're going to show more of who you are, the power and the gift you really have within you. We're going to bring out more of that. That's why I don't like the word like I'm bettering myself. You don't have to better yourself. You're perfect. We just need you to unexpose what you've been blocking for so long. Because a lot of times we come into this world as pure light. Yes. And like I said earlier, the tarnishes of conditioning and everything else from society and what we take on as a kid, all of a sudden we darken ourselves to try to adapt.
Yes.
And then we spend a whole lifetime, if that, to try to remove that.
And someone could be out there listening and asking, Vic, how do I remove that blockage? How do I remove that covering and, expose my light to the world? Great
question. So first off is, this is something I had to learn over time, because again, one of the things I had was I needed to be certain with things. It's why I focused on the mind. I loved learning. I learned a lot. I was studying over 100 books, reading 100 books a year and reading all this different stuff because I wanted to learn so much. And then I started to get away from that. Had a teacher taught me one time saying, it's great to know this information, but you're not letting life teach you. And I was like, well, what if I can cut corners and get faster and all this other stuff? And they're like, wisdom comes not from what you read in a book. Wisdom comes from the information plus your life experiences. Yeah. And so why I'm bringing this up, I'm tying this into the book a little bit because I talk about it in there. It's one of the things where if you're trying to figure out what it is, what do I need to work on, or how to break through these blockages? It's like I said earlier, it's going to be things that are going to show up repetitively. It's things you're not going to get away from. So if it's like for me, when I was money issues back, in my first book, I talked a lot about negative limited belief systems with like money. And I talked about the top 10 things and how I had like 8 of them. And I was wondering why I couldn't make money and I couldn't be successful from that perspective. And I started to pay attention to what kept showing up. What was the story I told myself? What was the verbiage, the words I was using? What was the feeling that I was getting? I had to be aware of all this stuff because that's how you're going to do it on your own. There are other metrics you can do. If you want to work with some people, there's many people who can help out with this. One of the things I love that I've utilized was hypnosis and hypnotherapy, in other words. And not hypnosis, hypnotherapy. And so hypnotherapy it uses tools to get into the subconscious mind. And then all of a sudden it helps to repattern that. And then they use things like an anchor. So for example, like this ring, every time I touch this ring, this brings me to my happy place. That's called an anchor. You're touching something or picturing something, and it has a feeling feeling attached to that. So every time I touch this, I'll think of my happy place, or I used to have rubber bands on or bracelets on, and I would feel the bracelet, and I'd be like, okay, this is me at a time when I was playing sports, and I was just a lot of pressure was on me, and I broke through. Right, it's that feeling and those emotions I tap to, and so these are things that can help reprogram the brain with things like that when it comes to breaking down some of these things. But here's the thing, it. A lot of times these things are stuffed down, and your ego, your brain, is what's pushing that down. That's why I said the universe will be there to help you. As long as you're saying, this is what I want, things are going to show up in your life to help show you in some way, shape, or form these blocks. And they're usually in patterns. They don't just show up once in your life. They're patterns. And once you kind of see the pattern, and you got to be mindful with this a little bit. This is where meditation comes in. This is where breath work comes in. This is why journaling is so important, because these can uncover this stuff to see exactly what's going on. Because when you see the pattern and you start getting out of your head, you start writing, or you meditate and you get out of your head and you just go into a center of peace, things are going to come to you to give you that information. And this is why in my book, I talked about breath work and meditation, because those are the two most powerful tools that I can share that can help to get to those things. Like sometimes you could do a meditation and just say, when you start practicing this for a while, you're like, today in this meditation, my intention is to just feel, what is showing up that I have this thing going on. Okay, great. Get into the meditation. And it may not get the answer during that time, but it may come all of a sudden. You'll just be standing somewhere thinking of something, and then bam, it just hits you. And you're like, oh my God, that resonates. Holy cow, that comes from so-and-so. Oh my God, I remember when I was 6 years old and my mom said this to me. I took that like it was the Holy Grail. So those are kind of some of the concepts that you can utilize to do that.
Thank you so much for explaining that. From everything we're talking about, our lives, or life is filled with, struggles, filled with a lot of obstacles, basically. How can we learn how to, see all of these struggles and obstacles as gifts for our lives, for our greatness in life?
So remember, here's one. I'll use the wisdom of muscles, right? So people who, if you go to work out, this in a way that you're not aware of this, but when you go to work out, you're actually looking for a struggle, and you're actually looking to fail. It sounds weird when I say this, but if you understand muscle physiology, when we work out or lift weights to work a muscle, when we get that soreness in that muscle, what that actually is you tore the muscle. You hit it past failure. And now what the muscle has to do is it's going to regroup, build more fibers, so that way it can strengthen itself. Nothing in life can grow without stress. It's that famous saying, if there's no pain, there's no gain. You have to endure a struggle or some experience. You have to go to the darkness. We've come from the darkness. We go through the darkness to get back to the light. We come from light. We go through darkness to come into this world. Darkness is our best friend. And so it's one of the things that, if you can understand that life, we try to find a comfort level. A lot of people try to live in comfort. And I always believe that that's robbing you of real life. Because life is this, it's ups and downs, right? Meditation and breath work, that smooths it out to where the ups, like in my life, I have ups and downs. There's no doubt about it, like anybody else. But if you watch my reactions to it, I'm very centered for the most part. I'm not perfect at this. I'm getting better every day. But it's one of the things where I don't let it take the most of me. It doesn't consume me. And I can see it and still be in that state of creating. So I can be like, well, this is what happened. All right, there's got to be reasons to this. I don't have the answer to it right now, but here's what I can do at this moment. And I'm going to be centered. Maybe I'll meditate. Maybe I'll do some of my practices to get myself in a good centered place. And then from there, I'll come from that level to go ahead and look at this situation. How do I want to create this? What's this going to mean to me? And so forth. But if you can remember that you have to have stress in order to grow. Everything in life needs stress to grow. Everything. Plants, the trees, the reason why the trees that face the most wind are the strongest. Why? Because they get stressed with wind. And if it's weak, it breaks. But if it isn't, it strengthens the wood that gets stronger, and that tree overall becomes stronger. So there's rules in nature. Just nature will show us all the answers. Nature has all the answers. We just have to. We've lost that art of learning from nature. We just live on land rather than being with the land. And so it's the same concept there. That's the one thing that I knew in my life that I wish I learned at such a younger age, that no matter what struggle I have, there's a gift in it. And you have to know that. You have to have the faith in this, not a faith of religious belief, a faith of inner knowing that's saying, you know what? Yeah, I'm going through these hard times. Maybe I went through a divorce. Maybe I went through this. Like, here's an example. I've interviewed a lot of people who, when they share their story, they had some sort of trauma, maybe emotional, maybe physical, or maybe even a health trauma that they went through. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I'll ask them later down in the episode, I'll go, so tell me, and I know this is heavy, especially if someone who's been molested or something, that's very heavy stuff. Yes. And I'll ask them though, tell me, was that a blessing now where you are in your life right now? Do you look back and say that's a blessing? I still to this day haven't got to know.
Wow, that's good.
They all look back and go, that has taught me this. This has given me this. It taught me to get my power back. It taught me to help sympathize with maybe it was women and men. It helped me to do this. It helped me in my career in this aspect. It helped me now to do this. Mm-hmm. That was a gift. Now, what's the difference between someone else who went through trauma and they're letting that dictate their life?
Oh, that's a cost.
Oh, this is a story. It's just a belief. Yeah. Right. This person now sees that trauma that they went through and all their traumas or whatever that shows up in their life. Mm-hmm. And they see it as a gift now. And now they're looking for that. And once you shift your perspective, because everything in life is perspective, because perspective is what leads to focus. And wherever you're focusing, that's what you're going to create more of. Mm. And so the more you can focus on things, like anytime that something happens, like if I get an argument with my wife, I'm not the most calmest person maybe, but I know afterwards in my head, I'm looking going, this is going to strengthen us. This is going to help us improve my marriage and my relationship. It's going to help us learn new communication skills. It's going to help us do this. If it's in business, there's struggles that happen in business. And when I fail, I don't say fail, but it's like if I don't hit the mark on something, it's like, okay, if I didn't win, in other words, okay, what is it I need to learn from, right? Because I always say there's no one loses in life. Nobody loses in life. That's a rule. You can see it differently, and the brain's can be conditioned that way, and it's going to show you what you're losing per se. But no one really loses, because the ones who win, they get a trophy. The ones who lost, they get lessons. Mm. So how can we say we lost?
We have to make use of all of this stress, all of this struggle as a gift to strengthen us for the journey of life. Wow, that's so amazing, Vic. Thank you so much. You are the creator and the host of the Mindful Experiment and the Mindful Chiropractor podcast. And from our conversation so far, I know how great and wonderful the messages and every episode of yours are already, and from listening also to some episodes. So, just for listeners out there who have never heard about your podcasts before, can you tell us what the podcasts are about and what are the listeners to expect from the podcasts?
So the Mindful Experiment podcast, I've been doing that since April, end of March, April 2018. So it's coming up to 4 years. And that podcast is all about the mind and life. So what that means is it's very broad information. It's not specific to just one element of life, right? I've had neuroscientists on that podcast I've interviewed. I share a lot of topics from functional neurology to spiritual laws to universal laws, just to business principles and so forth. But it's about life in general and how we can have this whole experiment, because no one knows life. No one has life nailed down to a T. It's all really an experiment that we're just practicing and doing and hoping to get things figured out along the way. Mm. And it's one of those things where, so we're all doing this experiment, and really the mind is what dictates the whole thing. If we don't have a centered mind, then you're not going to have a centered life. And so it's one of the aspects of how do we look at different elements of our life. And like I said, I've interviewed a plethora of different people, and to share just some nuggets and wisdom of what they're sharing, their gifts to the world, on how that you can amplify your own. And then the Mindful Chiropractor is more specific to chiropractors, and how to be more of a mindful chiropractor, how to be taking mindset principles that I kind of share in the mindset world, and all that I do in the Mindful Experiment, but I tailor it to chiropractors. So I kind of talk about, hey, if you're going to do this to level up in your business, or you want to help, share your message, or how to inspire the patient more, or how to, different metrics that we look at in chiropractic business. Here are things that you can do. And here's the mindset side to it and why you want to do it this way. Here's a universal law that ties it in. So it's just taking that element to the chiropractic profession from that level. But this is kind of what I do. And like when I work with entrepreneurs, sometimes people say, what kind of entrepreneur you work with? When I first started coaching. Yes. And I was like, I can work with any entrepreneur. And they're like, how can you work with any entrepreneur? I said, you all have the same mind. the rules still apply the same. I may not know your business structure 100%, but I'll know how to work with you to help amplify you, which is going to amplify every aspect of your life, including your business and money and so forth.
Yes, yes, and I love the title of your podcast. Is or of your podcast. This all start with mindful. So, apart from meditating, breath work, and other things that we've talked about, are there like some things we could also do in order to be mindful in every practice of our lives, in our businesses, for example, as entrepreneurs, or in just our life, generally in our relationship, marriage, yeah, in friendships. So.
Yeah, I mean, being mindful amplifies life.
Mm,
It's, I teach in my one of my course that my clients go through is I'll talk about that. Like, when you're in a true state of mindfulness,
yeah.
there's three emotions that show up. It's peace, bliss, and calmness. Right. So, well, peace, bliss, peace, bliss, and calm. And no, sorry, peace, bliss, and joy. I was like, I was missing one word. So, peace, bliss, and joy is a natural state of our soul. This is who we're very blissful. We're like, you think about who's bliss,
Mm,
who's peaceful, and who has joy.
yeah.
Children do for the most part,
True.
right? When you ever see a child that's very balanced, you'll see that they smile a lot.
Mm,
They everything is amusing to them, right?
mm,
And some people say, oh, they're amused because they don't know. No, they're just in a beautiful state of awe. They're in a state of mindfulness.
mm,
And what mindfulness does is it enriches the experience. It can also help you be very aware of what's really going on. These are like if you're very mindful in your business, you're going to be more in tune with, like, for example, if you're a chiropractor, you're going to be more in tune with the patient. You're going to be hearing things that they're not saying, or you're going to know what they enjoyed or didn't enjoy, or what they need to be told to help them understand what we do.
yeah.
Or if you're an entrepreneur, whatever business is, if it's a service or a product business, it's the same thing. If you're mindful in a product service or product business, you're going to see the production of your product and feel like this is just, there's something missing, and we got to look into this. Let's get a team together. Or if it's a service, it's the same thing. You're working with people in some way, shape, or form. So
Mm,
again, there's that connection that you're being more aware of and listening to. And when you can be mindful, like I said, everything is enriched. Like, here's an example I can share with your listeners. I used to teach mindful eating at one point, and I partnered up with a restaurant in my town, and we would do at her restaurant once every couple months. I come in and talk about the mindful side of things, and what's the importance of mindfulness, and then she would tie into the food that they were enjoying and take them through some exercises.
mhm,
And so what you can do is you can take a piece of food, whatever it is that you're going to eat, just
yeah.
eat it, chew it really fast, and swallow it. Right. And then try to remember and what you felt and tasted.
Mm,
Then I want you to do the same process, rinse your mouth with water. Now eat the same thing again, but this time I want you to chew it about 30 times. Don't pay attention to anything. Just pay attention to chewing. Focus on the listening of the, whatever let's say you're eating a walnut. You're listening to the crunch of the walnut, the texture of the walnut. What does it feel like in the mouth? You're moving things around. What flavor profiles are coming up? And you really start to tap into all these different things.
mm,
You can do this with like alcohol beverages, because like wine has different flavors and things, or
yeah.
attributes. Tequila, I know, has different elements.
Mm,
When people do that, these are all things that you can do. But when you're very mindful, you actually get more of the sensations of what that food offers and has. And when you're being mindful, you're not distracted with a TV or having things in your hand, waiting for the next bite. You're just sitting and being in the moment with that food, and it enriches the taste, the flavor, and the experience of it. Try that out. I promise you, this is one thing I need to work harder on. If I like to be transparent with people. That's one thing I struggle with. I just like to eat. I enjoy the flavors. I get them down really quick, and let's keep moving.
yeah.
But that's something I need to work on. But when I do it, it's like, holy cow, this is amazing.
Yes, that's awesome. As a closing remark, I've learned so much from you already, and there's so much more one could learn. I'm going to put the link to your podcast and your website on the show notes of this episode, so I encourage everyone to click on them and learn more from you, and as in even to ask you more questions, or to get more insight about mindfulness, about you living even a much more successful and happier life. But as a closing remark, I would love you to share with me, like, for people out there who think that they've missed it probably in life, how can they rediscover their greatness? For people who think, oh, they've made a mistake or taken a wrong turn in life, is it possible to rediscover their greatness, and how can they rediscover their greatness?
Love that question. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. You're not done. If you're waking up every morning and you wake up, you're
Mm,
still here to do something for some purpose, for some good. And
mm,
may it be to learn something, may it be to share your gift with the world, may it be something along that nature. But the one thing to know that is, and this is one thing I always share with people, like, there's no rules in life except the ones you create. You are a creator, so you're creating your life. That's rediscovering your greatness, is
mm,
remembering the creator of who you are and how you create your life. every single day. And once you know that and you embrace that, now all of a sudden you transform your whole entire life. The meaning of your life, what's the purpose of your life, you get to redefine it. A lot of times we haven't been conditioned this way in years, eons, millennia. And so we've been told that this is just life. This is what life is. This is how life is supposed to be.
Yeah.
No, that isn't. That's a cultural acceptance. That's not who you are and what your life is. It could be a family acceptance. It could be a cultural acceptance. It could be a society acceptance. It could be all three of those. But remembering the greatness of who you are is by understanding that you're a creator and understanding that the universe is always there to support you. You have love shining at you at every step of the way. God, Allah, Jesus, Yahweh, whatever you want to call the person that you want to, you pray to or whatever. It doesn't matter what the name is. They're always there giving love to see you thrive in whatever way you want. Because when you thrive, they thrive.
Yes.
And so it's like a very nice win-win relationship. And it's actually a win-win-win relationship, because when you're thriving, they thrive and humanity thrives because you're sharing your light to the world.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Vic. What's the best way to connect and work with you? For people out there who are interested in, connecting with you directly, what's the best way to do that?
The way to connect to me, Facebook is great. I'm on social media, Facebook / Dr. Vic Manzo. I'm on Instagram, the same one, Dr. Vic Manzo. Or if you want to reach out, send me an email or contact, you can DM me on social media or my website, empoweryourreality.com. You can get access to me there also.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much, Dr. Vic. I really appreciate this. This was so wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on, brother.
Wow, you made it to the very end of this episode. Thank you so much for listening. I'm grateful for your time, your love, and your contributions. Subscribe, like, review, and share this podcast. God bless you. Bye.